Welcome to Sir Lancelot's Real Estate Roundtable, your guide to mastering the realm of real estate in Central East Florida. I am Sir Lancelot Leonard, ready to uncover the secrets of seller strategies, home staging, mortgage mastery, and more. From Daytona Beach to Cocoa Beach, Lake County to St. Augustine, join me as we navigate the intricacies of real estate. As the leader of the Sir Lancelot Group at Florida Homes Realty and Mortgage, I'm here to arm you with knowledge and innovation, whether you're a seasoned homeowner or a first-time buyer, unveiling the kingdom of real estate, one roundtable at a time. Today on the Real Estate Roundtable, we're diving into the hidden world of risk and how to master it with one of the brightest minds reshaping the future of insurance for investors. Meet Aaron Letzeiser, the Forbes 30 Under 30 entrepreneur, active real estate investor, and co-founder of Obie, the insurance platform that's revolutionizing how 17 million, I'm going to say that again, 17 million real estate investors protect their assets from launching instantly bindable quotes to helping investors truly understand the difference between landlord and homeowner policies. Aaron is here to decode the insurance side of investing without the fluff. If you're serious about scaling your portfolio and avoiding the pitfalls that can swipe out your gains, this is one episode you don't want to miss. Aaron, before co-founding Obie, you'd already launched and exceeded several businesses. What was the entrepreneurial fire inside you that led to tackling the insurance industry next?
Well, Lancelot, thanks so much for having me on today. I would say there's certainly an entrepreneurial drive, but I would just say my general frustration getting insurance as a real estate investor was the biggest drive. I would almost say my naivety in the space was probably a gift early on. I didn't know and understand just how complex this space was. Fortunately, we have an incredible team of very, very smart people who've been doing this a very long time. But really, my day-to-day experience, along with my brother, who's my co-founder, our experience as real estate investors is the thing that really drove our need to build this company.
That makes a lot of sense, my friend. Always, as real estate broker, investor, contractor, there's always these like niche markets that we're like, this is not even a niche market. This is a giant market, but always can use some tweaking to make it easier, better, and for everybody. What was the aha moment when you realized the real estate insurance market was ripe for disruption?
Biggest aha moment, I think, was recognizing that it was really two things. One, it was recognizing that, buying auto insurance, buying homeowners insurance, that market, while still fairly antiquated, was driving forward, at least trying to keep somewhat of a pace with technological, advancement that existed. But we never really saw this happen for real estate investment properties, whether I was buying a rental unit condo, right, all the way up to a 304 unit apartment building. The process was the exact same. And so we were trying to understand why it was that, there were parts of this market that were moving forward and others that weren't. And really what we found is that, no one was really putting the time and effort into it because there's almost this delineation between your personalized insurance products, right? Your home and your auto and your boat and your RV, and then more of these business products, right? I'm a landlord myself. I consider myself a business owner. And so I want to be going out to those business insurance specific carriers and those markets and those brokers and those agents. But I was still only playing with a small dollar amount of premium. And so in the scale and that priority list of where some of these things happen, it just wasn't getting a lot of love and attention. And that's the feedback that we used to get from the market as well. It was kind of a, hey, we'll get to it, right? Send in the PDF, send in the spreadsheet, and we'll underwrite it. And so we started to dig into some of those experiences with people that were in the market, and they're taking all that data and they're plugging it into an Excel model of their own, much like you and I might be underwriting real estate investment properties. They're taking that physical property information, they're plugging it into an underwriting model. And so, my brother and I sat there and we said, why can't a computer do some of this, right? Why can't technology get us to at least a little bit closer to that? And then how do we start embedding that experience, that insurance buying experience? How can we make that just a little less painful by embedding that purchase experience and the management of your insurance inside of the platforms that people are already using on a day-to-day basis, whether that's your lender's origination software or your property management software.
For sure. Do you guys have any AI involved in it yet?
We do. I would say insurance is a market that is ripe for even the most basic of AI tasks, right? I think this is a market that's still so old school, still so paper and pencil, right? Like, I'm sure some of your listeners who have done some real estate investing, they're familiar with what 25, 30 years ago an HP 12C calculator, right? It's very similar to that type of market where insurance is still very old school. And so there are opportunities to be able to utilize AI to assist some of that. But I'm really excited, not for necessarily what it's going to be able to do today, but as other industries and financial markets start adopting it, I'm really excited to see what it's going to be able to do for insurance in another 3, 5, 10 years.
Oh wow, that's I think it's going to be way sooner to that. But yeah, 3 years I think is like we should be there in 3. I mean, the
You know,
way
I,
everything
I'm
else is being adapted into AI, I think it's going to be there sooner than
I'm
later.
hoping. I mean, we're certainly dabbling in that market today. As the really large players in the space are able to start turning the massive ship, right? I mean, it's like navigating a cruise ship or a tanker. They're slowly starting to turn their operation into a place that they can even start to be able to utilize AI in a way that's going to be actionable. Most of these systems and most of these companies haven't changed their technology infrastructure in a decade or more, which is why folks like yourself and other investors in Florida and around the rest of the country kind of get the brunt of that experience when you're otherwise used to being able to use technology on your phone or on a computer, on your tablet, to really effectuate the day-to-day tasks that you normally are used to doing.
I mean, I'll be honest with you to be more blunt. They're so old school that when I go and try to get an insurance quote, it's not about just getting an insurance. Get your 4 point, get your wind mid. This is Florida, so we need those. But wouldn't it be simpler to not pull a unified blanket kind of idea on everything? But now we have AI here that can go in and customize the quote according to the property that we're talking about. Like, okay, this property sits here. Yes, it's maybe in a flood zone, but it hasn't flooded in during the king tide and all the other things that were happening, let's say in Daytona Beach in the past few years. No flood claims were made, no flood happened really at the property, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one of the things. And then according to that, customize the insurance quote. So it's not just, hey, let's jack up everybody's rates because some of the houses got, destroyed on the other coast. Kind of you get what I'm coming from, you know? But that's
Yeah,
just my thought here.
you're absolutely right. I think even the step of before you get to AI, just trying to move the industry to a point where you, as the real estate investor, feel a little bit more like the master of your own destiny, right? One of the frustrating pieces that I had and something that we're really trying to solve for at Obie is, you know, it's such a challenge to go out and otherwise get an insurance quote. You've obviously gone through that with Citizens and others in the state. Others of your listeners probably have as well, but it's similar around the rest of the country. If you go out to your agent, it's very different than getting your home insurance, your auto insurance. Your home, you've got an intrinsic value there about this asset, but as a rental property, you look at it as a business, and so you really should be in control of being able to say, "Hey, agent, can I get a quote that has all these different options, and then also just some of these and some of these and some of these?" And it's not the agent's fault, but it's just so difficult to go into the carrier's website and pull all of those quotes out that it's time and cost prohibitive for them. We wanted to build a system so that way, if you want to sit there until your heart's content, adding and removing and making every type of different combination to see what works for you. But at the end of the day, what that means then is that in the event that you have a claim, right? Let's say this year you decided, well, cash is a little bit tighter, right? We had a property maybe that was sitting on the market for a little bit longer. We pulled the rents down. Our free cash flow on that property is a little bit tighter than what we thought it was going to be. We're going to move that up to a $10,000 deductible this year. We're going to save a couple $100 a month on this. But then you get some type of water event inside the property. Maybe the tenant has a small fire in the kitchen. Might only be $5,000 worth of work, but you at least were the one that consciously made that decision about what's going to be a part of your policy and what isn't. And so that was always the other big piece of the insurance market is I never felt like I had a full and complete and transparent picture into the policy that I was ultimately purchasing.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think in residential we're the same way still. I mean, I just go like, "Hey, can I get kind of like an insurance like what I need to get for my mortgage?" And then
Yep.
they come up with something, and I'm like, "Are you sure this is the best price?" No, I could remove this, and this is like, "Oh, you can, but you didn't. Obviously, like you're adding those extra stuff there, and it doesn't have to be there, But we really recommend you to have these things. I'm like, sure, but you should ask me before you just automatically add those. No,
Yeah,
that's
you know, and as an investor too, you unlike your agent, right, or unlike your broker, and we work with thousands of agents across the country. Obie extends our program to all of them, and the challenge is that unlike a home policy, as a real estate investor, you know your P&L better than anybody, right? And so you really almost have to be an advocate for the types of coverages, the endorsements, the limits that you want to throw on there in order to best make that work well for you, right? And that's the thing that we counsel for all of our clients is really to be able to sit there and decide what is most important, what is the goal of having insurance. And to your point, maybe it's just meeting the lender's loan covenants on the property. For other folks, they say, hey, you know what, I'm the type of person that uses a property manager. I really want to sleep well at night. I like getting my check in the mailbox once a month, and I want to be hands off. I like that $1,000 deductible. I'm willing to pay a little bit more because I'm the type of investor that, if I have a claim, then I'm not worried about the fact that, I've got to pay $1,000 out in order to get this $10,000 water claim or this fire claim or this tree that fell on the property. I want to sleep better at night. But ultimately, you in consultation with your agent are going to be the best advocate of what it is that you need for your property and for your goals.
Oh, for sure, I agree with that. So Obi has grown fast, and with a major backing, what's been the biggest challenge in scaling this venture-backed company so far?
Yeah, we are certainly venture backed. We took the route of taking investor capital in order to be able to build this. We had really big ambitions when we got started. But the thing about insurance is that you almost don't want to grow too quickly, too fast. And so that was early learnings for us. Fortunately, not in a way that was going to be painful, but something that based on really good advice and counsel and really solid advisors, we wanted to make sure that if we were going to do this, we are going to do it right. And so by partnering with lenders and property management companies to distribute this product and agents, insurance is all about making sure that for every dollar in premium that you're taking in, you're not paying out more than $1 in claims, right? That's actually a very challenged business. You need to be able to make money. And so you want to be very cautious and conscientious. I think fortunately for us, the market when we entered the space was in such a way that you had a lot of carriers removing themselves from markets, right? Certainly any of your listeners in Florida are familiar with that. If you're an investor in the Southeast Texas area, Houston or Harris County, very popular in the 2010s to buy apartments and rental communities and rental properties. Very challenging from an insurance perspective, right? Same thing in California with the wildfires or other markets. And so being very thoughtful around how we could build an insurance product that, to your point, wasn't filled with a lot of unnecessary bloat, to be able to make sure that the coverage that you're paying for is the stuff that you as a real estate investor really would need or might find interesting based on the fact that you have a tenant in that property and not just you as a homeowner.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about what makes Obi different. What does an instantly bindable quote actually mean for investors in particular, like practical terms?
Yeah, we've had people go through and run through our quoting flow directly on the website or through a partner, and bind a policy in less than a minute. Right? We utilize a lot of technology and a lot of third party data, so that way we're trying to limit the number of questions we're ultimately asking you. If we can find that answer someplace else, it was always very frustrating to me that I'd walk into my local agent's office, and again, it's no fault of their own. They're asking these questions from these carriers like year built, square footage, right? All of that is kind of table stakes at this point, right? And so how can I, given the limited time that you might have to dedicate to this process, how can I make that as actionable as possible? And so we wanted to make a really streamlined, really efficient, really transparent quoting experience. So not only can you actually bind a rate directly online in all 50 states across the country, but again, kind of back to that original point, I wanted to make sure that you felt like you were really knowledgeable about the coverage and what it is that we were asking you. and what that coverage can potentially do for you.
And I mean, to be honest, between you and me, or between every listener here as well, um, it is such a vital part of doing your numbers for when you're purchasing a property. How much is insurance going to be? Because that could be a make or break a deal. You know, you could get insurance for $20,000. You could get insurance for $40,000 for the same property, and it makes a big difference. You go on Obie's website and you crunch the numbers, and you're, holy cow, I could get an insurance for this much if I remove this and this and this item. That makes the deal work. But if I add these items, oops, it doesn't work now. And then you can put that in your calculators and everything. And that's a big thing. You know, that's a big thing.
Yeah, well, one of the earliest innovations that we worked on is something called a risk map that folks can find on our website, and you can throw an address in there, and it's going to give you information from the prevalence of tornadoes in your area, hurricanes, flood, something for your listeners specifically in the Florida market, um, flood zone, right? It has not been uncommon in my professional insurance career for somebody to go hard on cash. They get into that LOI, they've made their deposit, and then they find out they're in a flood zone. And so they were calculating that based on just what the property insurance cost is going to be, and then suddenly they didn't realize that they were going to need to buy this additional policy, right? Data and information is key when making these decisions, and that is one of the other benefits and superpowers of the platform is everybody sees what the trailing 12-month insurance number might be when you're getting that pro forma or the offering memorandum from an insurance agent or a broker. But ultimately, we never know what's behind that. And that's what I always counsel folks and advise them to really dig into and get an understanding of what's on that policy. Maybe even if they're willing to share a copy of that policy with you, because you don't know if they're severely underinsured, right? On the opposite side, which has been very prevalent in the Southeast, you don't know if that property is actually a subsidiary of Blackstone, right? Where they do their insurance very, very differently, whereby if you split up their annual insurance costs across all 80,000 assets, sure, it might look like it's only $1,200 a year, but that's because you're getting that pro rata amount of insurance and what that cost contributes to on the P&L. But when you actually go in there and look at it, for you as an individual landlord buying one individual policy, it might be $2,000, it might be $2,500. So it looks really good when you're trying to pencil out that number, but you always want to be able to gut check that. And that's something that you can do directly with us, or something that, a really good agent that no one understands this specific vertical and your specific market should be able to help you out with, and always be able to gut check some of those numbers.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Back in the day, and not back in the day, just a couple of years ago, we were always like, "Hey, what's their insurance policy? Can we have a copy of their insurance policy?" It doesn't really make any sense because you're gonna have to get a new insurance policy on the place, anyways. They might have an insurance policy that's been with the company for 10 years, and they're locked in a lower rate or whatever, and it just doesn't make any sense. So now it's like, don't call five insurance companies. Go on the website basically, and you can find out what you want. You could add your items to it, and you're probably competitive with all the other insurance companies. So here we go. It's so much easier to figure out numbers without even having to call the other agent in the transaction. The listing agent is like, hey, I need this and this and this document to run my numbers. I could run my numbers without a lot of that information now, which then again makes a faster transaction happen, because we're just, everything goes faster because we have everything at our fingertips. That's amazing,
Yeah,
man.
you're exactly right.
Um, so Obie isn't just another insurance company; it's a tech first. How has the tech edge changed the investor experience? I know we talked about it a little bit, but can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I would say the biggest piece to it is, really being able to ensure that insurance is not a hang up during your process, especially during closing, right? We went out to a lot of lenders when we first got started, surveying them about their experience working with the insurance requirements of their loan covenants. And we found that typically somewhere between 8 and 12% of loans get delayed at the closing table, or even potentially die because rate lock might expire because the insurance was wrong, right? So whether that's like making sure that the loan number is on there correctly, the mortgagee clause, the limits, right? Nobody's really paying attention to page 312 of the loan doc until they're actually sitting there at First American Title and Chicago Title's office at 3 o'clock on a Friday, right? Your insurance agent's packing up for the day. Their underwriter at the carrier is on their way out, and you're like, I didn't realize that I needed $1 million in general liability limits, and I only got 500,000. And so one of the things that technology has allowed us to be able to do is we hard code those requirements. So any of our agents that we work with, or any of the partners that we might have, you might be using, one of the local lenders that you might have, but within their software platform, the way that we connect and the way that technology has really been able to change this game is that you can either get to that step of having an insurance requirement. Most of your listeners, if you've gone through a closing process, you're in some type of portal to upload a copy of your insurance policy. Now you can do that, or you can get an instantly compliant policy from Obie right then and there. Now, if you upload your own from State Farm or otherwise, that's fine, but they're going to send that off to their insurance verification department, right? They're going to take a look at it. They're going to be some turnaround. But if you buy it from Obie directly inside of that system, because of the way that we've hard coded the requirements for that specific lender, if you buy an Obie policy, you've immediately checked the box on that requirement, and you get to continue to move forward on your loan closing process. So not only are we trying to decrease the number of loans that get delayed, but hopefully inside of that, insurance verification process, maybe 2 to 3 business days to turn that around and get that green checkbox on the next task on your list to close, we can take care of that for you immediately, and you can move on to the immediate next step.
That is awesome, man. I didn't even know you integrate with all the lenders in the country, or most of
Not
them,
not
or
all the lenders. We integrate with 4 of the top 5 single family rental lenders in the country, and then we've got a myriad of probably another 60 to 80 small to medium sized lenders that service really different regions, real estate investor specific regions around the rest of the country.
okay. So it's for investors, you pretty much cover the bulk of the lenders that
Yes.
that would do investment properties. That's pretty cool. I didn't even know that before. Now that's awesome, man. What's something most investors overlook when it comes to insuring their single family or rental properties?
In this market, I would say the biggest thing that's overlooked is verifying and updating replacement cost. So you and each one of your listeners, myself included, I've got my homeowner's insurance renewal coming up. This is something good to do for your own home individually as well. But there's an amount, right? It's called a building limit, property limit. Maybe it's called coverage A on your property. That is the amount of insurance that the insurance company will actually pay to help rebuild your property. So let's say, God forbid, the entire property burned down. We've seen this happen. It does happen. It's tragic. Um, but no one updated the insurance from when they bought the property 7 or 8 years ago. Again, your agent doesn't necessarily know about your property, right? They're a great advocate and a consultant, but we've seen properties that have been, insured when they come to Obie at $60 a square foot, $80 a square foot, right? There's no place in the country that you can reasonably rebuild and remediate a burned out building for less than $120 a square foot. And even then, like, you're on a budget, you're on a time, you better make sure that you hit those numbers. And so the tragedy occurs not only because you don't have enough money to rebuild, but if you have debt on that asset, you have a mortgage, the lender's going to sit there and say, hey, listen, I still own 50% of the interest in this place. Insurance company, just cut me a check for my amount, right? They don't even want to be involved in the rebuild. And so now you're left with substantially less amount of money than you thought you were originally going to have, along with a property that you're going to have to figure out how to kind of clean up and then sell as is and take what you can get out of it. So, if there's one thing out of this entire show that your listeners take, it's go back and take a look at your insurance coverage. Do it on an annual basis. Inflation has driven the cost of materials up. Labor times obviously have been extending. Any of your listeners in real estate are going to be familiar with that. And all of that trickles down to what that number looks like, right? Take that plus your square footage, divide by it, and see what you're currently insuring your property for, because you never want to get that surprise. And listen, if you're paying for insurance, make sure it's something that you're going to be able to use in the event that the worst happens.
Yeah, agreed. You said good insurance broker should be a part of every real estate investment team. What are the hidden costs or risks that investors miss without one being on their team?
That's a good question. I would say understanding and recognizing some of those, I would say, vital and important endorsements, right? You talked about before. Sometimes your quote shows up with all the stuff you might not necessarily have asked for. The carrier's website just kind of generates it and sends it out to you. But one of the ways that I think an insurance agent that really knows and understands this space is going to be able to sit there and proactively work through with you what it is that you care about, right? So two of the things that I would say are always sometimes overlooked, but something that an agent is really familiar with because they're ultimately the ones feeling or fielding the original claims requests that are coming through. The first one is water backup, right? As a landlord, you've got a tenant in that property. It is highly likely that that tenant has never turned off a master water shutoff valve in their life, right? They might not have even turned off the valve behind the toilet or underneath the sink before. And so the water's just gushing out, and you're getting the phone call, right? Hey, like the unit's flooding. What do I do? Um, Backup is something that I always highly recommend to real estate investors. Water gets everywhere, right? Figure out a way of making sure that you're adequately covered. But also, I would say on all of those move-in tours and those move-in inspections that you have with your tenants, make sure that they know where those valves are. Make sure that they know how to use them. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. It would not shock probably most of your listeners that there are a lot of tenants that have just never had to do that before. So you never want to get that phone call. The second most important endorsement I think recently is something called, depending on the age of the house, right? It's called law and ordinance coverage. And what that means is that if you're living in a building that's, current 50, 60, 70, 80, maybe 100 years old, there are certain ordinances inside of your town, your community, your county, or your state that you've effectively been grandfathered into. But in the event that you have a loss that impacts the piping connection out to the water main or the electrical inside of your asset, the city's going to come in and say, yeah, you can repair this. We'll give you the permit to do it, but you need to actually build it to code now, today's code, not the code from 50 years ago. And so ordinance and law coverage is going to step in when that happens, when you have cost overruns that are going to come in to specifically take the existing condition of the asset and upgrade it to the condition that it should be in, right? That is something that, we see all the time. We get those phone calls from folks where they didn't necessarily realize that their house was so out of code, but that they've been grandfathered into it. So those are the two things that I would think and would recommend and say those are the types of things that come in that an agent would be able to help you understand as you're working through that process.
Oh yeah, definitely. I haven't even heard about this last one, and I own a building that was built in the 50s, so I might have to get one of those. And there's a giant oak tree in front of it, so I don't know how long the pipes will last in front of it, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting things where you have a limit on your property. We just talked about that limit. This is effectively giving you coverage for those unforeseen impacts and costs, and it's going to cost you a little bit less than what it would be in the event that you're just increasing the overall limit on the property.
Gotcha. What's the real difference between a landlord policy and a homeowner's umbrella policy, and when should someone use one over the other one?
Mm, that's a really good question. I would say a homeowner's policy does exactly what it sounds like, right? You are the homeowner, you are living in the house, right? That's going to give you the types of coverage like contents coverage or other items, loss of use coverage, where you might have to put yourself up into a hotel or inside of an extended stay or an Airbnb while the property is remediated or fixed. A landlord policy, if it's specific to the real estate investor category, it's going to have some coverages in there, like the ones that we just talked about, but also some other really important things as well. So something like, loss of rent coverage, right? You are expecting to be renting out this asset for, 800, 1,000, $1,200 a month, but you're not going to actually be able to inhabit it for the next 4 months. Your tenants left, they're gone, right? You had an issue that you need to remediate. And so that's going to really cover you in the event that you thought that you'd be having some cash flow from this asset that you otherwise are not able to collect on right now. I would say the other thing that's really important is that in the event that this is a property that, much like so many landlords across the country, they became accidental landlords. They had an asset that they started with, maybe their first time home, their condo, and they moved out. Maybe the family grew bigger. Maybe they got married, they had kids, they wanted to get some grass and some trees. And so they just kind of left that property there and they've been renting it, but they never changed the insurance. And so one of the things that's also quite unfortunate is that you kept a homeowner's policy in place. You've had a tenant in there a couple of years. You have some type of claim, and the adjuster shows up and they say, "Hey, I'm here to talk to Lancelot." And the tenant's like, "Oh, here? I've been living here, right?" And the guy's like, "Well, this is a homeowner's policy, right? Don't give your insurance carrier a reason, right? To deny that claim unnecessarily, right? Insurance carriers look at the two policies slightly differently. They're underwritten differently. And so you want to be really cognizant of making sure that you have the right coverage. Again, to going back to what I mentioned earlier, if you're going to pay for insurance, make sure you've got the right insurance. Make sure you're really clear and transparent with your agent about the condition of that property. So that way you can get the coverage that ultimately you're paying for and that you deserve.
I got you. Got you. Should investors be putting their properties in LLCs? And how does that affect getting proper insurance coverage?
There's certainly benefits to it, right? You can speak with your attorney and your accountant about your specific situation. But we do find in many circumstances that the advice a lot of our clients get is that it does provide a bit of a separation and some legal buffer there between you as an individual as well as your actual rental property. Now, there are certainly carriers that are out there that don't want to write properties in an LLC, right? That's a clear cut sign for them that like, hey, this is a business, and we're just not interested in that. So it can pose some challenges, but I would say the carriers that actually know and understand this risk are going to be the ones that you actually want to be buying insurance from anyway. They're going to be the ones that say, hey, I have a landlord specific, I have a real estate investor specific, home dwelling policy. And I welcome it being inside of an LLC. I welcome you being a responsible landlord who's thinking about how to appropriately run this asset in a way that, should also reflect the fact that in the event something's broken on the property, you're going to proactively go out there and fix it as well. So I always see that as a really positive indicator that someone has taken the time and effort to really build their real estate business in a way that can be beneficial for everyone.
That's awesome, man. So next up is going to be the tactical lightning round. I have three questions. Answer them as effectively and as fast as possible. What are the three biggest factors affecting insurance rates right now?
Ooh, inflation, unpredictable weather, and specifically right now, actually, the tariff market.
Ah, definitely. Is that also in the insurance business? That's interesting. So how?
Yeah, it is. So interestingly enough, a couple of things. One, the tariff market will directly impact the pricing of replacement materials, right? Any
True.
building materials. But broadly speaking, all insurance rolls up to something called reinsurance. That's insurance on the insurance carrier, and all of that is basically funded by banks, pension funds, large institutions who are broadly invested across the entirety of the financial markets. And so, as those markets start to squeeze a little bit, eventually that trickle down really creates the perfect storm.
Awesome. Thanks for that answer. Next one. What's the number one mistake you see investors making when comparing policies?
I would say the number one mistake today, actually, I would say, is not throwing it through ChatGPT. Those are, since we were talking about AI earlier. There's a really it's not always accurate, right? Like every AI gives you that disclaimer, but it's really interesting today, whether it's insurance policy documents or quotes or really any other type of document that you want to compare and contrast. Throw it in there, see what ChatGPT says, and allow ChatGPT to create some questions for you, so that way you can go back to your agent and say, hey, it looks like you gave me a quote from carrier A and carrier B, but am I right in understanding that this one has a sublimit? Right, a sublimit is something that basically says, yeah, you've got $200,000 in coverage, but your water damage only goes up to 10,000, right? And that's buried on page 8,
Yeah,
right? Those are the important questions, and I think that's actually a really interesting use case for consumers these days.
that's awesome, man. I use ChatGPT for a lot of things. A lot of things. For those just starting out, how can they best estimate insurance costs before even buying a property?
Oh, this is an easy one. You go to obieinsurance.com. There you
There you
go.
go.
Listen, if computers can do something, it means that there is not there's not a person behind the screen that is manually typing in all your information into an Excel spreadsheet like we talked about at the top of this podcast. Go in there, take a look as you're just kind of perusing, and you want to gut check insurance costs. Go throw that address inside of Obie, and take a look. Right, your agent, if you have a preferred one, you have you have a specific agent that you know and trust, they can also come to Obie, grab an appointment from us, and be able to continue to serve the investor community.
That was awesome. Aaron Letzeiser isn't just disrupting an outdated industry, he's empowering investors to make smarter, safer decisions. Whether you're holding one property or scaling portfolio, obieinsurance.com is a game changer for fast, transparent, and investor focused coverage. Big thanks to Aaron for pulling back the curtain on what smart investors need to know today. Be sure to follow him on LinkedIn, Twitter, and check out Obie's YouTube for more insights. It's going to be in the description below. Until next time, keep investing smart and stay insured. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a good day. Thank you for joining us on Sir Lancelot's Real Estate Roundtable, where we've unveiled the mysteries of real estate together. Remember, in this kingdom of possibilities, every dream home is just a discussion away. I can help your real estate dreams come true. Just call me at 786-449-7518. Until our next roundtable, may your ventures be prosperous and your homes be filled with love and joy. Farewell, fellow knights of real estate.